Respect always begins with self-respect. That may sound like a cliché, but it's actually one of the deepest truths about human interaction. People don't treat you primarily according to what you ask of them. They treat you according to what you reveal about yourself. If you carry yourself as though you are unworthy, uncertain, or perpetually apologizing for your existence, the world responds in kind. But when you stand with dignity, when you act as though your life has inherent value, people pick up on that immediately. It's not arrogance, it's alignment with something fundamental, the recognition that your life matters and that you have a responsibility to treat it as such. Think of it this way: if you can't respect yourself, why should anyone else? Respect isn't about inflating your ego or pretending to be flawless. It's about an honest relationship with yourself. Do you keep the promises you make to yourself? Do you hold yourself to a standard that makes you someone you can look at in the mirror without flinching? Because if you don't, you will unconsciously communicate that gap to others, and they will sense it long before you open your mouth. Self-respect is forged in the small, often invisible disciplines of daily life: waking up on time, taking care of your body, speaking truth even when it's inconvenient. Each of these acts accumulates into a structure of inner authority. And that authority radiates outward. It shows up in your posture, in the steadiness of your voice, in the calmness of your presence. People might not consciously identify it, but they feel it. They feel the difference between someone who respects themselves and someone who doesn't. The tragedy is that many people try to shortcut this process by demanding respect from others without first building it within themselves. That never works. It's like trying to withdraw money from a bank account you've never deposited into. At best, you'll be met with indifference, at worst, with contempt. The order of operations cannot be skipped. You cultivate self-respect first, and external respect follows as a natural consequence. So the first step isn't to ask, why don't people respect me? The first step is to ask, do I respect myself? Because until that question is answered with an honest yes, no amount of external validation will ever fill the void. Respect begins where self-respect is secured, and here's the truth to carry with you. If you stand tall in your own eyes, the world will rise to meet you. Respect doesn't come from authority in the way most people imagine it does. You can hold a title, you can have a position of power, you can even force compliance, but none of that guarantees respect. Respect emerges from consistency. It grows when your actions match your words, when people can look at you and say, I know who this person is, and I know they'll show up as themselves, no matter the circumstance. That reliability is far more commanding than any authority that comes from rank or status. We often underestimate how much people are watching us, not in a paranoid sense, but in a natural human way. We take note of how others behave when no one is paying attention. Do they cut corners? Do they bend their principles when the stakes are low? Do they promise one thing and deliver another? Every small inconsistency chips away at trust, and once trust is gone, respect doesn't last long. Consistency, on the other hand, builds something solid. It's not flashy, and it's not always rewarded immediately, but over time it establishes credibility. The mistake people make is believing that respect can be demanded in the moment. It can't. Respect is cumulative. It's the pattern of behavior others have seen repeated again and again. Think of someone you truly respect. Chances are it's not because of one dramatic event. It's because they lived in a way that proved reliable over months, years, sometimes decades. They became trustworthy by being consistent, especially when it was inconvenient or difficult. And consistency isn't about perfection. You don't have to get it right every single time. What people look for is whether you stand back up when you fall, whether you correct yourself when you're wrong, whether you own your failures instead of hiding them. That, too, is consistency. It's consistency of character. So if you want respect, Don't chase authority. Don't chase recognition. Focus instead on aligning what you say with what you do over and over again, because in the end, people don't respect titles. They respect truth embodied in action. Here's the challenge worth taking seriously. Live in such a way that if your words were erased tomorrow, your actions alone would tell the story of who you are. That is where respect takes root. There's something profoundly compelling about quiet strength. It isn't loud, it isn't boastful, and it doesn't need to draw attention to itself. In fact, its very power lies in restraint. When someone carries themselves with calm confidence, when their presence communicates stability rather than volatility, people instinctively take notice. This is because quiet strength signals self-mastery, and self-mastery is far more impressive than the ability to dominate others. Anyone can raise their voice, anyone can impose themselves through force or intimidation, but very few can command respect simply by being still, composed, and secure. Think about the people in your life who you naturally defer to. Chances are they're not the ones constantly trying to prove themselves. They're not desperate for validation. Instead, they radiate a sense of assurance that comes from within. It's not that they never face conflict, it's that they don't allow conflict to define them. Their strength isn't reactive, it's centered. That's why it carries weight. Others look to them not because they demand obedience, but because they embody stability in a world that is often chaotic. And this quiet strength isn't passive. It's not weakness disguised as humility. It is, in fact, a disciplined restraint. To remain calm when provoked, to choose clarity over outrage, to act with intention instead of impulse, that requires far more strength than lashing out ever will. It's easy to be loud, it's difficult to be composed, but it's the latter that earns lasting respect. Psychologically, people sense when someone has control over themselves, and that's what inspires trust. If you can't control your emotions, your words, or your actions, why should anyone believe you could be trusted with theirs? But when you demonstrate that your impulses don't own you, that you can hold tension without crumbling, you communicate reliability at the deepest level. So don't mistake quietness for weakness or calmness for submission. Those qualities, when rooted in strength, are some of the most magnetic traits a person can cultivate. People may not articulate it, but they recognize it and they respect it. Here's the reflection worth carrying forward. Strength that needs to shout is fragile, but strength that whispers is undeniable. Be the person whose calm presence commands the room, not because you asked for it, but because you've mastered yourself. That is the essence of true respect. One of the most overlooked ways of earning respect is through listening. Not the shallow, performative kind of listening where you're just waiting for your turn to speak, but the kind of listening that signals genuine attention, where you make the other person feel that, at least for that moment, they matter. That's powerful because at the core of human beings is a desire to be seen and heard. When you provide that, you elevate yourself in their eyes, not by demanding their respect, but by offering them yours first. Most people think respect flows one way, but it doesn't. It's reciprocal. If you consistently dismiss others, interrupt them, or reduce their perspective to background noise, you may think you're asserting dominance, but what you're actually doing is eroding trust. People don't respect those who refuse to respect them back. On the other hand, when you listen deeply, even to ideas you disagree with, you demonstrate humility. You reveal that you value truth more than ego, and that, ironically, strengthens your position, because people begin to trust you as someone who seeks understanding rather than victory. Listening is not weakness, it's strategic strength. It allows you to gather information others miss. It allows you to see people as they are, rather than as projections of your assumptions. It's also a profound act of discipline. restraining the impulse to dominate a conversation, to prove your intelligence, to showcase your knowledge. That takes control. But when you manage it, the reward is immense. People feel heard, and in turn, they begin to listen to you. Philosophically, listening is a recognition of human dignity. You're saying your perspective has value, your experience has weight. And when you do that consistently, people begin to extend the same respect back toward you. The reciprocity becomes natural. It's no longer a transaction, it's a relationship. So if you want to earn respect, start with your ears, not your mouth. Train yourself to listen with intention, to absorb what others are truly saying, and to reflect it back honestly. You'll find that people lean in closer when it's finally your turn to speak, not because you demanded their attention, but because you've already given them yours. Here's the truth. Those who know how to listen rarely need to raise their voices. Respect flows to them naturally because they've mastered the art of giving before receiving. Integrity is the invisible currency of respect. You can't buy it, you can't fake it, and you certainly can't demand it. It's earned slowly through the choices you make when nobody is watching. Every decision, big or small, either deposits into or withdraws from the account of your integrity. And people notice, even when you think they don't. They notice when your actions line up with your principles, and they also notice when they don't. Respect follows naturally from that recognition. We live in a culture that often celebrates convenience over principle. It's easier to cut corners, to bend the truth, to sacrifice long-term credibility for short-term gain. But the problem with that is simple. Once your integrity fractures, so does the respect people have for you. Trust is fragile. Break it once, and rebuilding it is a monumental task. Integrity, then, isn't just about doing the right thing when others are watching. It's about becoming the kind of person who would do the right thing regardless of who sees. And integrity doesn't always make life easier. In fact, it often makes it harder. Telling the truth might cost you approval. Standing by your principles might cost you opportunities. Choosing the difficult path might even cost you comfort. But paradoxically, it's in those very moments of cost that respect is born. People admire those who sacrifice for principle because it's so rare and because it reveals something unshakable about character. Psychologically, integrity offers another reward, self-respect. If you compromise your values for convenience, you know it, even if no one else does. That knowledge corrodes you from within. But if you hold the line, you walk away with your head high, knowing you didn't betray yourself. That inner strength radiates outward and commands respect without you having to ask for it. So, integrity is not glamorous. It won't make headlines, but it leaves an impression that endures far longer than charm, talent, or status. People may forget what you said, they may even forget what you did, but they won't forget whether you stood for something real. And here's the bottom line. If you trade your integrity for anything, you've already lost more than you've gained. Respect follows those who refuse to sell out. Be that person, and respect will never be something you have to chase. The paradox of respect is that the harder you try to demand it, the less of it you actually receive. People recoil from those who insist on recognition, who constantly announce their worth, who posture and declare themselves deserving of admiration. Why? Because respect, unlike fear or obedience, cannot be forced. It's not something you can seize. It's something you inspire. And it's inspired when you embody qualities that others find undeniably valuable qualities like courage, humility, honesty, and discipline. Think of the people throughout history who are remembered with reverence. They weren't the loudest voices in the room, nor were they the ones most desperate for approval. They carried themselves with a quiet certainty, a sense that they were aligned with something deeper than their own ego. Respect followed them, often unasked for, because people could sense the weight of their character. The lesson is clear: when you focus on cultivating strength of character, respect emerges as a byproduct. But when you chase respect directly, it slips through your fingers. This is true in everyday life as well. You can tell when someone is trying to impress you, when they're performing for your validation. It feels hollow, and rather than respecting them, you feel a subtle resistance. Contrast that with someone who simply lives by their values, who isn't preoccupied with how you perceive them. They might not even be trying to stand out, yet they do. Their authenticity carries more weight than any performance ever could. The essence of this principle is humility, not the kind that disguises insecurity, but the humility that comes from knowing your worth without needing to advertise it. That balance, strength without arrogance, confidence without conceit, is what inspires people to respect you willingly. They aren't coerced into it, they give it freely, and that, of course, is the only kind of respect that matters. So, if you find yourself desperate for recognition, step back and ask, am I living in a way that genuinely inspires respect, or am I chasing approval to fill a void? Because, in the end, respect is never won by demanding it. It is awakened in others when you live in alignment with truth. And here's the takeaway worth remembering: stop asking for respect, become the kind of person who makes it impossible to withhold.